Hello everybody, this is David. Welcome back to my channel. In this video we're going to be looking at the cultural and historical position of women as marginalised people in the Old Testament. So in this video we will have a look at, or briefly look at, the laws regarding women that are found in the book of Deuteronomy in chapters 21 and 22 and their effects on women in general. So before we do that, let's look at the creation narrative in the book of Genesis chapter 1. In Genesis chapter 1 verse 26 we read, "And God said, Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female, he created them. So in these verses we see that men and women are created in the image of God. There appears to be an equality of standing of both men and women in the eyes of God. We do not see any difference or any inference of inequality between men and women in the creation narrative. Let's look at the biblical narrative of the actual creation moment of woman in Genesis chapter 2. And in verse 18 we read, "And the Lord God said, It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helper suitable for him. And out of the ground the Lord God formed every beast of the field and every fowl of the air, and brought them unto Adam to see what he would call them. And whatsoever Adam called every living creature, that was its name. And Adam gave names to all cattle, and to the birds of the air, and to every beast of the field. But for Adam there was not found a suitable helper for him. And the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept. And God took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And the rib which the Lord God had taken from man, he made a woman, and brought her to the man. And Adam said, This is now bone of my bones, and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man." So in these verses we see that the woman was created as a suitable helper for the man. So by this we can infer that she was in no way deficient. She was not deficient mentally, or ethically, or spiritually. She was perfect in every way for the man. They were to live together in a complementary sense. There was no sense of competition between them. So how then did we go from this perfection at the moment of creation to women being downtrodden and marginalised in the Old Testament era? Well, the simple answer is sin. Sin spoiled the perfect creation that God had made. So the Old Testament is full of narratives of how women were mistreated and oppressed by men. Now, to be frank, to be honest, the Old Testament Jewish society had become very patriarchal. Men were in charge and women were subservient. They were regarded as the property of their fathers and brothers. The only thing that gave a woman value in this society was her sexual purity. Now, many things could affect how her purity was viewed. One was menstruation, for example, a very natural thing, but something which was viewed with suspicion in that society. Now, according to the book Sacrifice and Gender in Biblical Law by Nicole J. Ruan, she says, and I quote, "Menstruation is symbolic of death, not only because there is a loss of conception, but also because the menstruant loses some of her life force and her bodily integrity. End of quote. So to be honest, this is a very complicated subject, and it's not something that we can go into in depth here. However, what this led to, what we can say, is what this view led to was the view that women were somehow impure. This also led to the idea that women were responsible for a man's lust. He was not responsible for his own lust, but that a woman was a temptress. Does that sound familiar in any cultures today? Now, one of the expectations on women in that society is that she should be a virgin on her marriage. There were heavy expectations on a woman from her new husband, from her in-laws, and even her own family. She should be regarded as pure and chaste, and not as damaged goods. Now, in the book Gender and Law in the Hebrew Bible and Ancient Near East by Victor H. Matthews, published by Bloomsbury Publishing in 2009, here's a quote: "The serious expectation that daughters be virgins before marriage is shared by other ancient cultures. Classical Greece also had high expectations and strong demands for the virginity of girls. As with Hebrew, the words for young girl and virgin are the same, and that's the word parthenos. Furthermore, the Greek word sophrosune, meaning right action, which refers to cautious moderation for men, means absolute chastity for girls. Now, ancient Near Eastern laws also show this concern. If the girl has been spoken for, that is, a bride price has been paid, then sleeping with her is a capital offence." End of quote. So another thing that was common in that society was that women were dependent on men to protect their good name. A woman had no power in her own right to defend herself. She would have to put up with the stigma of being regarded as an impure woman if her brothers or her father did not come to her aid. Now, there are examples in the Old Testament where a woman has been sexually molested or even raped, and the only recompense she had was the response of her father and brothers. Now, in many cases, the molester or rapist is killed by her male relatives. Now, on occasion, she was made to live with her molester or rapist in an inversion of normal ways of living, as the Jewish law forced her attacker to live with her for the rest of his life and treats her properly. Now, I cannot in good conscience imagine how that woman could ever live at peace in her own heart and mind with a man who did that to her. Now, again, in another book, Sexual Politics in the Biblical Narrative, subtitled Reading the Hebrew Bible as a Woman, written by Esther Fuchs and published by Bloomsbury Publishing in the year 2000, here's a quote here: "A question that deserves to be asked, however, is why is the sister in both narratives a victim of rape? And why does she not avenge her own rape? The historicist answer would be because this was impossible in ancient Israel." End of quote. So one of the things which becomes more obvious the more you read the Old Testament is the attraction between men and women. The Old Testament uses phrases which imply beauty, which imply loveliness, which imply the attraction of women to men and men to women. That this is a perfectly normal part of the human condition. And I'm going to quote from fulcrum.org.ro, a website which says humanity, a quote, humanity was created female and male and was commanded to be fruitful and multiply. This means, among other things, that sexuality, the difference between female and male, and the physical attraction of each for the other was believed to be an essential part of the nature of persons as created by God. Sexuality was not evil, and neither sex could be condemned for being attractive to or for being attracted by the other. End of quote. So it is true to say that the subordination of women was never God's plan. He has a heart for women and is their protector. Let us now return to the book of Deuteronomy and see his heart for women. Now in Deuteronomy chapters 21 to 22 we find several laws related to women. In chapter 21 verses 10 to 14, which I'm going to read now actually. Chapter 21 verses 10 to 14. When you go out to war against your enemies, and the Lord your God delivers them into your hand, and you take them captive, and you see among the captives a beautiful woman, and desire her, and would take her for your wife, then you shall bring her home to your house, and she shall shave her head and trim her nails. She shall put off the clothes of her captivity, remain in your house, and mourn her father and her mother a full month. After that you may go in to her and be her husband, and she shall be your wife. And it shall be, if you have no delight in her, then you shall set her free. But you certainly shall not sell her for money. You shall not treat her brutally, because you have humbled her. So these are the rules for men who take women as captives of war. So in these verses, God gave permission for a man to marry a captive who delighted him. But first he had to give her a time of mourning. And also if he changed his mind about wanting to marry her, he could set her free, but he was not to sell her for money or mistreat her. In chapter 21 verses 15 to 17, let's look at that now. If a man has two wives, one loved and the other unloved, and they have borne him children, both the loved and the unloved, and if the firstborn son is of her who is unloved, then it shall be on the day he bequeaths his possessions to his sons, that he must not bestow firstborn status on the son of the loved wife in preference to the son of the unloved, the true firstborn. But he shall acknowledge the son of the unloved wife as the firstborn by giving him a double portion of all that he has. For he is the beginning of his strength. The right of the firstborn is his. So these are rules for men that have two wives, one who is loved and one who is unloved. So the law was to make sure that the unloved wife was treated fairly and that her children are adequately provided for. In chapter 22 verses 13 to 30 we see the laws of sexual morality. I'm going to read them actually. Laws of sexual morality in Deuteronomy chapter 22, starting at verse 13. If any man takes a wife and goes into her and detests her and charges her with shameful conduct and brings a bad name on her and says, I took this woman, and when I came to her, I found she was not a virgin, then the father and mother of the young woman shall take and bring out the evidence of the young woman's virginity to the elders of the city at the gate, in other words, at the law court. And the young woman's father shall say to the elders, I gave my daughter to this man as wife, and he detests her. Now he has charged her with shameful conduct, saying, I found your daughter was not a virgin, and yet these are the evidences of my daughter's virginity. And they shall spread the cloth before the elders of the city. Then the elders of that city shall take that man and punish him, and they shall fine him 100 shekels of silver, and give them to the father of the young woman, because he has brought a bad name on a virgin of Israel. And she shall be his wife. He cannot divorce her all his days. But if the thing is true, and evidences of virginity are not found for the young woman, then they shall bring out the young woman to the door of her father's house, and the men of her city shall stone her to death with stones, because she has done a disgraceful thing in Israel, to play the harlot in her father's house. So you shall put away the evil from among you. If a man is found lying with a woman married to a husband, then both of them shall die, the man that lay with the woman, and the woman. So you shall put away the evil from Israel. If a young woman who is a virgin is betrothed to a husband, and a man finds her in the city and lies with her, then you shall bring them both out to the gate of that city, again the law court, and you shall stone them to death with stones. The young woman, because she did not cry out in the city, and the man, because he humbled his neighbor's wife. So you shall put away the evil from among you. But if a man finds a betrothed young woman in the countryside, and the man forces her and lies with her, then only the man who lay with her shall die. But you shall do nothing to the young woman. There is in the young woman no sin deserving of death. For just as when a man rises against his neighbor and kills him, even so is this matter. For he found her in the countryside, and the betrothed woman cried out, but there was no one to save her. If a man finds a young woman who is a virgin, who is not betrothed, and he seizes her and lies with her, and they are found out, then a man who lay with her shall give to the young woman's father 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife, because he has humbled her. He shall not be permitted to divorce her all his days, should I say. A man shall not take his father's wife, nor uncover his father's bed. Very interesting, actually, these laws. Here, God was protecting the innocent wife who was unjustly accused by her husband. In addition, if a man took advantage of an innocent virgin, the law made sure that the young woman was provided for. It's interesting how seriously God views sexual sin. So, particularly against women. So, in these Old Testament laws, we can see that God speaks out in defense of innocent and helpless women. So we can say that God views women with high honor. So I want to thank you for joining me in this video. See you on the next one.